Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, but thank you for being timely to our next installment of the Conversations with an Expert. I see some more people hopping in. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. All right, we'll get started in just a minute. But welcome, everyone. Some more people hopping in. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome, welcome, everyone. All right, we are right at noon, a minute past, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So we have a lot to cover today. But with that, just welcome everyone to our Conversations with an Expert series that we do on behalf of the statewide Human Trafficking Task Force. This is part 2 of our 3-part medical series. So thank you for everyone who joined part 1 and you're back. But of course, welcome to all of our new folks. My name is Alina Acosta. I'm the statewide Human Trafficking Task Force Coordinator. And before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items before we turn it over to our wonderful speaker, Dr. Barnett, today. And so with that, I do want to say, as you all can note, many of you don't have access to the mute, to unmute yourselves and come off camera, but you all should have access to that chat function, and we encourage questions. Please, please, please do not hesitate to drop any questions that you have in the chat throughout Dr. Barnett's presentation, even near the end, where we're really going to be prioritizing getting to your questions and having Dr. Barnett answer them. We're also going to be collecting all of your questions for our part 3 of this medical series, where we're going to have a panel of experts come on and specifically answer those. So please do not hesitate to use that chat function and ask your questions. Additionally, as you may have noticed, we are recording this, right? That is for our own internal purposes here at CJCC. We keep track of everything and we put it on our CJCC YouTube page for you all to go back and look at this presentation, but also for those individuals and folks that weren't able to make it today. So just noticing that as well. And one thing that I do want to say is just this caveat, right? Before we get started, there are some portions of this training that may involve sensitive and uncomfortable topics, right, for attendees. So please do not hesitate to step away for a self-care break, right? We understand that some of the work that you all are seeing on a day-to-day can be very heavy, human trafficking as well. And we know that in order for you to really show up your best and serve those people, you need to make sure that you're okay as well. And at the end of this presentation, we'll be providing some of that contact information to speak to anyone if you may need, right? So with that being said, we're done with our housekeeping, and I would love to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Catherine Barnett. She's an assistant professor at the nursing at Kennesaw State University. She earned both her doctorate and master's degrees from Kennesaw State, along with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the Medical College of Georgia. She has over 25 years of experience in women's health. Dr. Barnett has dedicated her career to caring for women throughout pregnancy, labor, and delivery. Her research focuses on critical issues like substance use disorders, human trafficking, and forensic nursing. Notable recent publications include Characteristics of Substance-Addicted Mothers that Predict Graduation from Family Treatment Court, and Establishing a Community Academic Nursing Partnership to Lead a Healthcare Response during a Human Trafficking Extraction Operation, of which I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about today. Dr. Barnett's work has been supported by funding from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration and the International Association of Forensic Nurses, further advancing her impactful research on substance use and forensic nursing. So, an expert in her own right. Very excited to have you, Dr. Barnett. Thank you so, so much. And I will toss it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Alina. I appreciate you having us, and thanks to CJCC. And for you guys that aren't familiar with CJCC, that's Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and they are helping sponsor this task force and this Conversations with an Expert. So I want to just say thank you. Alina, everybody good seeing my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as Alina mentioned, this is the second part to Conversations with an Expert. Last month, Sarah Pedersen and Amy Boyd discussed statistics related to human trafficking and helped medical professionals kind of identify those individuals. And so I'm kind of the continuation of what if we've identified them, then what's our next step? And what is medical's role to build and help establish a multidisciplinary response to really combat human trafficking? How healthcare professionals can really collaborate with other organizations to share resources and expertise and knowledge to really do it as a team approach instead of an individual approach, which is kind of what we've been doing in a lot of places in the past. And this multidisciplinary team really helps the patient holistically and meeting all of their needs and resources. So we're going to talk about that through the program today. A couple learning objectives there on the screen. I'm here to share with you about the medical response team that I helped build with several faculty at Kennesaw State University, and how we work together with other disciplines, law enforcement, and community partners to really build that comprehensive, holistic care that's trauma-informed that we've reached out to really not just look at their medical care, but look at safety of those individuals and resources for them moving forward. We will discuss different roles of the medical team, who needs to be on that team, and what each of their roles are, and that multidisciplinary team's roles and how they interact and work together. Important, as I mentioned, trauma-informed care, trauma-informed language. If you have not had formal training, I really recommend formal training on trauma-informed care. It does not come naturally always to us. So really having some formal training on that really helps. Really respecting the patient's autonomy in their decision-making for their medical care. And I will say, as a healthcare provider, this objective is probably the hardest for me. As a medical provider, I tend to think, oh, I know what's best and I want them to be in a better situation, according to my viewpoint. And that's not always what they want. And we have to respect those wishes. They have already been forced into really horrible situations, and they don't need medical to then force them into anything else. They need to have the education and the resources provided, and then they need to be allowed to make those decisions. But that can be really challenging. And then finally, we're going to discuss what resources are needed if you want to do something similar in a medical response or a multidisciplinary team. What resources are needed? What equipment? What supplies? What personnel are needed really to implement this? During my presentation today, I will define individuals who have experienced human trafficking, usually as patients. As a healthcare provider, I am a nurse. I do have my doctorate of nursing. It's kind of confusing sometimes when I'm introduced as Dr. Kathy Barnett. My doctorate is of nursing science. I'm not a physician. I am a nurse, a labor and delivery nurse, and a sexual assault nurse as my trade and my love. So I will call the individuals patients, because that's what I've always kind of called individuals I'm caring for. But know that sometimes the word victim is used and sometimes the word survivor is used, depending on context. We need to make sure we're really careful in what words we subject them to. Many of our patients do not see themselves as victims, even though maybe they're being forced in to have sex 30 or 40 times a day. They do not see themselves as victims. So we need to make sure we're careful about our language choice and not putting our own terms onto them, kind of thing. All right, to give you guys the background of how this all started, I think the background is really important to really understand the need and why this medical response was created. In the fall of 2021, Georgia's largest human trafficking operation occurred, and it was called Operation Something Onion. We'll call it Blue Onion. They had a different name. If you're searching for it in the news, it's all over the news. You can go look up the background of it. It had a different name, but a specific restaurant didn't like that we were infringing on one of their appetizers. So we are going to stay away from that name. But anyway, point is, it was a multi-state operation across the southeast of the United States, and specifically in Georgia, down in the Waycross, Georgia area. The Department of Justice investigated over many months and indicted 24 people on federal conspiracy charges for human smuggling and labor trafficking. Their charges were from, like I said, human smuggling, labor trafficking, and over 100 individuals were recovered during this operation. They had been illegally transported from Central America and Mexico. They were to be working on these onion farms in Waycross, Georgia, where they really weren't provided proper equipment, proper clothing, resources. They were digging the onions out of the ground using their hands. The men and women that were indicted on charges had made over $200 million on this illegal activity in the time it had been running. Of these 100 individuals that were recovered, they were making about 20 cents. They were getting paid about 20 cents per bushel or basket of onions that they were digging up by hands. And these individuals really had been threatened with violence, beaten. They were held with no food, no clean sanitation, no clean drinking or safe drinking water. There were some that were raped. All of them were in prison and many were beaten. 2 individuals did die in this trafficking operation, or not during the operation, but during the time they were on these onion farms because of heat and horrible living conditions. So thankfully, Homeland Security and the GBI were able to come in and local law enforcement and really recover these individuals that had been trafficked. Interesting part, and where all of this comes into the medical response, is law enforcement recognized a really big need and worried about the health situation of these individuals and what kind of condition they'd be in when they were extracting them during the operation. And so law enforcement reached out to CJCC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and Sarah Pedersen, who is the state sexual assault nurse examiner, and asked if they could put together a team of nurses to come down and really help triage those patients. I think law enforcement in the beginning just wanted some nurses on the ground to kind of take a quick look at the wounds and decide, do these individuals need to go to the emergency room, or would they be okay, going on to the supportive housing that they were going to offer them to receive care later. And so Sarah Pedersen jumped on the opportunity and put together a team of nurses. I think there were 2 or 3 others that went down with her, and they all went down to the South Georgia area to be there at the date of the operation, at the date of the extraction. And what they found was really quite incredible. These people had dehydration, they had sun damage and major sun issues, back and leg injuries from being bent over so long, hand and finger wounds from digging in the dirt. And so it was really helpful that Sarah and the other nurses there were able to really treat a lot of these minor to major injuries, and then also refer. I know someone with a blood pressure issue, they had to refer on to the hospital, and some had to go for major health care at the hospital situation. The result of this was that this team was really able to use trauma-informed language to build trust with these individuals, and not only provide their immediate care, some food and some water, but really build that trust with healthcare. And what they found is that these individuals started opening up more to the nurses than they would the police, which I guess as healthcare professionals, this did not surprise me, but it might have surprised some others. These individuals started sharing about the people who had been holding them captive and really giving more information. Of course, with HIPAA, the nursing team could only give so much other information, but what they could do is then turn that victim back around to law enforcement to provide that information directly to law enforcement. And it was all about that building of trust that Sarah and her team were able to do. That was so important, that they felt comfortable because of those nurses to then help with the prosecution side of arresting the people responsible for this injustice. So anyway, that's the background of how it originally got started, just to give you some background of where all of this idea kind of concept came. So Sarah Pedersen of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council recognized this need, and also law enforcement really appreciated the work that this team did. And so they wanted to build a team that could respond. And this team needed medical professionals, lab services, medications to treat all on site. So they really needed to have a diverse team that could be there on site and treat, which meant nurse practitioners or physicians that had the level to prescribe treatment options and order lab tests. Reason this was so important on site, you might be thinking, okay, why can't we just take them to the ER, or why can't we take them elsewhere? Is unfortunately many of these members or these patients will return to human trafficking afterwards. They will return to their trafficker or another trafficker afterwards. And again, that goes back to their autonomy and kind of respecting decisions they make, although difficult many times when you're caring for these patients. So these patients might not receive medical care for months or even years down the road. And so if we can meet their immediate healthcare needs right then and there, we know that we have made a difference in their life and potentially others' lives when it comes to sexually transmitted infections and HIV and all those kind of things that we are really meeting the needs of that individual at that moment. We also know those that do take up the resources, meaning they do go with a non-government organization to go to a housing, to get housing opportunities and education opportunities and all the wonderful services that are provided in our community. Sometimes there's still a lapse before they can receive care, right? For whatever reason, getting settled, it might take. And finally, what's so important about this on-site medical response is developing that trust. We know that there's an average of 10 visits a patient makes to an emergency room or a healthcare provider before they, on average, disclose that they are being trafficked in their own language, obviously. So if that's happening only on average of after 10 visits, we need to do a better job as medical professionals in building that trust so that even if they decide that they don't want that to leave that lifestyle at this moment in time, that they will feel comfortable, one, seeking medical care in the future, and two, maybe it won't take 10 times for them to have an interaction with healthcare before they choose to use the resources that are being offered to them. So getting back to how the development of this medical team went, on Monday in March of 2023, so about a year and a half ago, Sarah called me up and said, could we have a meeting? And she came to my office, and I gathered a few colleagues of mine, and she told us about an upcoming operation. This was on a Monday, and the human trafficking operation that the law enforcement were going to lead was on a Thursday of that week. So we had about 3 days to put together a medical response. What was going to happen is the GBI, Homeland Security, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Homeland Security, there were some Federal Bureau of Investigation officers there as well, and a lot of local law enforcement were conducting a human trafficking operation to try to find individuals who are being trafficked and give them the opportunity to leave trafficking and also to arrest the traffickers. And so they invited our medical team to join this operation. So we had about 3 days to put together a team of healthcare professionals, lab technicians, sexual assault nurse examiners, mental health professionals, the equipment, medications, those kind of things. So my colleagues, Dr. Susan Beidler, who is a nurse practitioner, Dr. Jamie Say, Dr. Tricia Sullivan, and I were up for the challenge. And we literally had 3 days to put all this together. My priority was, one, like I've mentioned, to build trust and rapport between the practitioner and that patient. I really want them to see healthcare as a trusted person that they can go to and reach out to and really feel safe with. These individuals do not have a lot of trust in other people because they have been mistreated and abused by so many around them. My hope was that trust would be built so that, again, that they would come back, even if they left us, to healthcare, to utilize healthcare and to use us as a resource moving forward. And then my other priority was to provide them as much comfort as possible while they were with us. Food, blankets, hygiene kits, stuffed animals, and fuzzy socks were on my priority list. I wanted them to really have that comfort while they were there, even if they decided to kind of go back with their trafficker. It was important to me that they felt comfortable and cared for and to meet just kind of their human needs. Medical professionals were always big at wanting to solve their conditions, right? Treat their infections and treat pieces of them. But I really wanted that holistic care and to provide just basic comfort. So our first operation in March of 2023 on that Monday, obviously I mentioned we were told about it. We were told it was going to be in Atlanta, somewhere near the Atlanta airport, and that was it. That was all the information we were given. On Tuesday, we were told that never mind, they didn't need the medical team anymore because they didn't have a place for us. So that was kind of frustrating because at that point, I, of course, was already devoted to this operation and was 100% giving my energy to it. So I met with law enforcement and was able to run through some scenarios. It happened that the hotel where the operation was occurring, I had been to, and I was familiar with the location, and I knew there was a conference room right next door. So law enforcement reached out to the conference room that was adjacent to this hotel and was able to reserve a room in this conference room for us to have space to do our medical care. So a team of about 15 nurses, lab technicians, SANE nurses, put together tents and lab equipment, and we built our own medical suite inside this conference room. You can see this top left picture here are tents because we had to have privacy was a big concern for our patients. How are you going to do a full physical exam on someone in the middle of a gigantic conference room? So we had tents built where we could triage these patients and provide full physical exams. You can see over here on our second picture on the top is our lab. We had a partition so that we could draw blood and have really some space for lab work to be done. You can see on the bottom left corner of the tent, this was one of our exam rooms with a massage table, which is not the perfect exam table, but we were making it work, and all of our equipment and lights that were needed. And then finally on the bottom right, this was our nurse practitioner's tent where she could do her health history and her interviews with the patients before the exam. So it worked pretty well, the tent situation, although it was a lot of labor putting it all together kind of at the last minute. As I mentioned, you can see this is the first operation. We had a large group of sexual assault nurses that joined us, mental health professionals, lab technicians. There was about 15 total. The picture on the right is our triage table where when they would come in, we would do basic vital signs, get some health history and some basic chief complaint type of information from them to see really what the patient's needs were. We had to change our mindset when we went in and really realize that this was about what the patient needed and not what we wanted to give them. Because as healthcare providers, we tend to just go in that thought process of here's what you need. And we had to stop and really listen to our patients and find out what did they want out of this? What were their concerns and how could we meet them at the spot they were at? Talking more about our team, I mentioned this, we had advanced practice nurses and doctors that were available. Mental health nurses were really important to do some of that triage and in this initial discussion and counseling with them. I did mention we had several sexual assault nurse examiners and then nurses with expertise in substance use disorders. Many of our patients do have substance use disorders. They have been either put on drugs by their trafficker to help control them, or they have used substances to help deal with the horrible abuse that they're going through. Okay, my favorite, or one of my favorite parts about this operation, that Monday night with the first operation when I went home, I wasn't worried about the medical part of it. I knew my team and I knew we all had 30 plus years of experience in nursing and healthcare, and I knew we could put together a team to provide the medical care. My biggest worry really was the comfort of these patients and how we could take care of them. So Monday night, obviously, with this operation, there's some secrecy involved with it. When we found out on Monday, I couldn't tell people where I was going or what I was doing because we don't need to blow the whole law enforcement operation, right? They don't want, unfortunately, all different occupations and types of people are involved in human trafficking, from the most highly educated to the least educated, from high socioeconomic to low socioeconomic. Offenders and traffickers can look like anything, any race, any sex, there's women traffickers, there's male traffickers, any kind of presentation. So we need to make sure that we're not really blowing law enforcement's work. They plan for months and months in advance to put these operations together, and we're coming along as their guests, and we want to make sure we're not doing anything to jeopardize all of that planning. So I needed a ton of stuff, or I had an idea that I wanted a ton of stuff, but I couldn't just say, hey guys, here's what I'm doing. So Monday night, I sent a text to a close group of my friends, and this is what I said in the text. Hi all, I need your help. I can't tell you what I'm working on, but I need to provide medical care to some individuals in need. I need donations of blankets, fuzzy socks, and stuffed animals. If anyone feels compelled to donate, please drop off any items at my house. And in 24 hours, I had 3 dozen fuzzy blankets, 30 stuffed animals, a dozen fuzzy socks, and other supplies. So it was really amazing to see. You can see this far picture on the left. This is all the donations that my friends brought in for really not knowing what I was working on, whether it was they had no idea, but they just stepped up and went to the store and got things that they knew I needed. By Tuesday, I was concerned about other things like providing them what I call hygiene kits or comfort kits, knowing that I wanted them to have basic shampoo, conditioner, soap, toothbrush, toothpaste, face wipes. Some of them had contacts that if they were going to be extracted from their living situation, they needed supplies for. Obviously, pads and tampons for their periods. And so again, I sent another text to another group of friends and said, hey, who can purchase me some supplies? And again, I had supplies arrive at my door and was able to put some kits together. Since then, I needed to make sure, jumping kind of ahead to future operations, that this was sustainable. I couldn't keep sending texts to my friends saying, hey, I need your help. I mean, I probably could and they probably would, but at some point they might not like me anymore. So I began to think of other ways we could build the sustainability of the comfort side of things. Water and Gatorades and juices were important to me. Peanut butter crackers and granola bars, having them, they might not have eaten a meal in a few days. So having them have something that they can snack on while they're getting medical care was really important to me. It's amazing how people in the community want to help and they don't know how to help. So I reached out to some community organizations. I had a Girl Scout who, as part of one of her projects, built 100 hygiene kits for me, put together, collected it from her friends and family and community members, and built 100 hygiene kits. She also collected medical equipment that I needed to be sustainable for this operation. I had a high school club reach out to me, and they'd heard about it through other people in the community, and they wanted to do a supply drive. I've had college organizations do supply drives. So it's amazing how easy it is once you get in connection with some people that want to help and to put these things together. But that was really important to me, that we were meeting not just those patients' medical needs, but also their comfort needs. We had cute little drawstring bags that they could put the stuffed animals and the socks and the blanket and the hygiene, and then they go home with a little tote bag full of all their stuff. And when I mean home, I mean either to a new location that they're going to receive housing and support from, or some unfortunately return to a trafficker or go into a situation with a new trafficker, unfortunately. Sorry, I don't know, my case study thing's popping up and down. So I want to share with you at this medical response that we did in College Park, a patient that really stood out to me and I will never forget. She was one of the first patients we had that evening, and she was teeny tiny. She was like 4'10", weighed probably 90 pounds, and we all thought she was a child when she walked in. She was teeny tiny. She ended up being 24 years old, but was teeny tiny, definitely malnourished and small. We'll call her Jasmine. That's not her real name, obviously, but I'll call her Jasmine just for identification purposes. We quickly triaged Jasmine. We offered her services, and she said, "I want everything. Anything you have to offer, I want." She had two children at home with her mom, who she was no longer in contact with, and she thought she was pregnant. So we started with just the basic information and then took her over and let her pick out a stuffed animal and a blanket. This teddy bear here in this picture is the teddy bear she picked out. While she was in with the nurse practitioner, she'd left all of her supplies in a chair nearby, and I had to grab a picture of the teddy bear and blanket and pillows she picked out. That teddy bear, you can't really tell, or maybe you can in the chair, that it is as big as a human in the chair. It was as big as her, and watching her the whole night when she moved kind of from station to station, getting her health care, whether it be lab or the nurse practitioner, she carried this big teddy bear with her, and it was quite adorable seeing her and the joy that she exhibited with this teddy bear. How much happiness just a simple teddy bear and blanket and fuzzy socks brought to her as she carried it around the room. She had this great smile on her face I'll never forget. She did meet with our nurse practitioner. She did want a full physical exam. She did want a urine pregnancy test. As I mentioned, she thought she was pregnant. She did want STI, sexually transmitted infection testing and treatment and prevention. She wanted to get started on birth control pills if she wasn't pregnant because she was worried. She was having sex, unfortunately, 30 to 40 times a day. Forced by her trafficker. She was not receiving any of that money. She would go and do a sexual act for money, and then the trafficker was taking all that money, and he was literally dropping her off, making her do this, and then picking her up and taking the money from that. We did do a urine pregnancy test, and thankfully it was negative. She did want her hemoglobin checked because she had a history of low iron, so we were able to do a hemoglobin and hematocrit and run some more on-site tests. We had lots of point of care or point of service tests, which made it great that we had those lab services right there that we could test and make sure we prescribed medicines according to her situation. She did get STI prophylactic medication, and we did run some sexually transmitted tests. Some of her tests did come back positive, so we were really glad that we were able to treat those for her. Jasmine was interested in starting on birth control once she found out she wasn't pregnant. And so our nurse practitioner, after a full exam, including a pelvic exam, was able to start her on birth control pills, give her the education of how to take them, when to take them, all those kind of things, and give her a 3-month supply. We also gave her, it was really important to us that we give her resources in her area near her that she might be able to go to get a continued prescription for those birth control pills and continued care. We don't want to just make a small impact and then abandon them. We want to make sure they've got resources. Now, it is going to be an obstacle for a situation like Jasmine to seek out that care because of the trafficking situation. But we wanted to give that to her in case. So free clinics in our area, how she can get follow-up care, those kind of things. We spent about 2 hours with Jasmine providing her care when all of a sudden we were told by security that we were under a lockdown. We did not have a bathroom inside of our conference room. It was out down a hall. And so we weren't allowed to go to the bathroom or leave to go get food or anything like that. We were kind of locked in this conference room. And what we found out was Jasmine's trafficker had tracked her on her iPhone with Find My iPhone. He did not know she had been taken away from the situation by law enforcement and brought over to us. And so her trafficker was tracking her down. He wanted his quote unquote property back, is the way he looked at it. And he was coming to get her. And he disguised himself as an Uber driver and bought at a local gas station a case of water and brought it to our conference room where he knew her location was, and said to the personnel outside the conference room that he was delivering. He was an Uber driver and water had been delivered. So he was hoping to march this case of water into our conference room and take Jasmine back with him. Fortunately, our security guards were outsmarting him and he was arrested on site, thankfully. let's see. Jasmine did mention that her baby puppy, his name's Oreo, you'll see him there on the right, was in the trafficker's car. So law enforcement was able to get the puppy out of the car and bring it to Jasmine. The nurses, it was our therapy dog for the evening as Jasmine continued to get care, her physical exam with the nurse practitioner and such. We were able to pass Oreo around, and we really got some enjoyment with him. Poor puppy was pretty malnourished as well, and I had wished dog food had been on my list of things to bring, but it just wasn't. But Oreo was matched back with Jasmine, and it made her really happy. Next, a woman was brought in who had been extracted by the police, who Jasmine called her cousin. This woman was not related to Jasmine, but in the human trafficking exploitation kind of arena, that's how she envisioned her. We did keep the cousin and Jasmine away from each other. We were not sure and did not. Jasmine was doing so great on getting care and kind of making decisions on her own. We did not want somebody else to come in and influence her. And we weren't exactly sure where the cousin was in the kind of hierarchy of the with the trafficker and how much control she would have over Jasmine. So we kept the cousin apart. But unfortunately, at the end of the night, Jasmine and the cousin did decide to go back to the apartment where the trafficker lived. Now, the trafficker had been arrested, but we know in these cases, at some point, they will probably be let out on bail, maybe, and there's other potential traffickers there at the apartment. Jasmine said to me it was her birthday the next week and that he had promised her a really big party and she didn't want to miss the party. So really sad to see her go because we knew what she was going back to, being subjected to forced to have sex 30 to 40 times a day. Was really taking a toll on her body. And we were really sad to see her go back to that situation, but we had to respect her autonomy. When she was walking out at the end, she ran up to the advocate that we had there that had worked with her all night and gave her the biggest hug. It was very sweet. She told her thank you for everything we'd given her. As they walked out the door, she turned to her cousin, not real cousin, but her fellow trafficked victim, and said something to the effect of, man, you really missed out. You should have gotten all of the health care and all of these goodies that I got. Now, of course, the cousin, we did offer her the comfort items. She did take blankets and stuffed animals and such, but she didn't want any of the medical care. But even before Jasmine left, she really was verbalizing to the other patient how much she'd gotten out of our care, which was just really, really nice for us to see and really made all that work. We said if she was our first patient that night, and we said if she's the only patient we touch and care for that night, that it was all worth it, all that hard work. We were just really happy to make an impact on Jasmine's life, and hopefully one of these days she'll decide to leave that life. Community academic partnership. This is where all of our success came from. That Monday when Sarah Pedersen came to my office and said, how can we make this work? The first thing I thought about was my friends at Bethesda Community Clinic. Melissa Belfield was supposed to be with us today. I'm sorry she's not. She had a family emergency and is at a funeral today, so we're all thinking of her. She runs a community clinic, like I said, Bethesda Community Clinics out of Cherokee County, and we at Kennesaw State University are really fortunate to work with Bethesda. They are a mobile unit that goes out in the community and treats really a lot of individuals living with homelessness, substance use disorders, patients that really don't seek health care a lot of other places or have trouble accessing health care, maybe transportation, maybe it's financially. And Melissa and her team treat these patients regardless of any limiting factors that they may be facing. So I called on my friends at Bethesda and said, can you guys help us? And they said yes. And they have been an integral part in our team. They have the equipment, they have the physician oversight, they have the meds to prescribe, they are a licensed mobile unit. So they have, we might have the team of expertise when it comes to nurses and nurse practitioners, but they've got the resources to really make it work. They do have this beautiful mobile unit, and I'll talk about it in a minute. The mobile unit did not have a working part for that first operation in the conference room in College Park. So we were not able to use the mobile clinic for the first one, but we did since, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. On this bottom picture, you can see all the donations that we use, comfort items, and some of my team. All these teams are different operations that have stepped forward and really helped provide care. To show more about what is offered at Bethesda is this great mobile clinic. Is you'll see in the top picture here a full exam room with exam equipment, which makes it a little more comfortable than that massage table that we used. There is room for labs to draw blood. You can see here on the bottom, they've got great lab equipment. We can run STI testing, HIV testing, like I mentioned, hematocrit, hemoglobin, A1Cs, lots of the basic lab tests right there at point of service. Another benefit is there is a bathroom on there, which also is nice for patients. The truck is run by a generator. It's got Wi-Fi. It's just a great resource for us to take to future operations. I know everyone across Georgia doesn't have the privilege of having a Bethesda, although the more you find resources in your community, there are other great community partners that have mobile clinics across Georgia. It's just finding them and then finding if they're available. Sometimes the human trafficking operations that we've been invited to are on days that Bethesda already has community clinics set up, which is also makes it difficult because the mobile truck can't be in two places at once. So let's talk about the evolution of the medical response. I mentioned that first one, we set up in a tent inside a conference room, and that worked okay. But it was a lot of work. It was a lot of people. It was a lot of time dedicated. And we ended up treating about 6 patients that night. And to have 15 healthcare professionals there and all the resources and the hours it took to set up and take down, we wanted to make sure we made this sustainable and really a bang for our buck kind of thing. None of us were getting paid to be there. We wanted to make sure we were using our time wisely and really just doing the best we could. So the second operation, we did use Bethesda's mobile unit, which was great. It eliminated a lot of the setup with the tents and the exam tables and all that kind of things. Still, when we had the mobile truck, we still needed a room nearby to put the rest of the people, because if we had that 15 team, they can't all be sitting on that small mobile unit with the patient being cared for. That would really creep the patient out, I'm sure. So we need another room where you could have the comfort items and the food for them to eat and the advocates to hang out, and you just needed another place. But it was great if the police department, law enforcement could provide us a room and a place for the truck to park, we could go back and forth close by to make sure all that was taken care of. So we were learning really how to maximize that mobile unit and bring Bethesda with us. We also, in the evolution, decided telehealth was an option we wanted to explore. Our operations are usually 12 hours, and they can be 1 day or 2 days. They're usually from like 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 in the morning. Some have gone as late as 3 and 4 in the morning, which is hard to get any nurse practitioner or doctor to be able to give up that much time of their schedule, especially since we're finding out about these a lot of times last minute, usually the week of, sometimes a week or two before. And so asking a physician or nurse practitioner who might already have a full schedule of patients on their list to drop everything and be able to come spend 12 hours in the middle of the night isn't really sustainable for a long time. So what we've been able to do is incorporate telehealth in there, and I'll talk more about telehealth, but that's been great because we can have nurses on site, and then the nurse practitioner physician can come on for their section using telehealth. I think that's it for that one. So talking more about telehealth, that first one, we did have a nurse practitioner there the whole time. And so in the second one, we had a nurse practitioner. The third one, we decided to start using telehealth. You'll see in this picture, Dr. Susan Beidler, who's a nurse practitioner with us at Kennesaw State. She is on telehealth, and I am pretending to be the patient just so we could have you see that. In that box below that foam board that you see, it's lots of equipment. There's otoscopes and ophthalmoscopes and all kind of instruments that we can help the patient use so that Dr. Beidler can really see what's going on with that patient. This allows for us to do maybe 4-hour time chunks with different nurse practitioners or physicians that work with Bethesda. They're all covered under a supervision of Bethesda physician. And then that's not putting a burden on any one healthcare provider so that we can do chunks. In these healthcare operations, it's really interesting. We might go from having 3 or 4 patients there at a time, which we did at the last one, and then 4 or 5 hours go by where we have nobody. So this allows healthcare professionals to continue their normal job and maybe hop on with us after hours or maybe late at night, knowing if they don't have to work maybe early that next morning. So it really just gives us some flexibility. The other problem we ran into is that law enforcement was really worried about having the Bethesda's mobile unit on site. They were worried that when they were trying to, their goal is to arrest traffickers, obviously, and get individuals, obviously, resources they need. And they were worried that they'd spend all this time and energy creating this operation and really putting a lot of work into bringing these traffickers in, and that the mobile clinic might spook some of them. So on Operation 2, 3, and 4 that we've done, they put the mobile clinic a few miles away. Usually one time we were at a fire station, one time we were at a police. They put us at a artillery range for police. Can you imagine if you had just been extracted from your trafficker and police are taking you to a shooting range that has active people shooting? But anyway, we made it work. But we did find that patients were reluctant to leave the hotel and come to another location. It was really a barrier to care, and we really lost lots of patients that wanted care but didn't want to go a couple miles away. At that point, they just want to be free and leave and go. So we've really transformed what we're doing, and this last one was done in the hotel of the operation, a few floors down from the takeout room. So the takedown room was, on floor 5, and we were on floor 2 in our own room. We had advocates, survivors, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and the medical team. It did make for a challenge. We'd gotten used to our big mobile unit where it had all the lab supplies and medications, and to adapt to a hotel room became a bit of a challenge. One, just where do you put all the stuff, right? There's not that many tables. The other fear Sarah and I had was we don't want people examined on the bed. These are victims of trafficking, and so the idea of then treating them in the bed felt wrong to Sarah and I, to be honest. We did bring a large container of medications that are frequently seen, so birth control, Plan B, STI treatment, those kind of things we did bring with us. And we brought basic tests, so COVID test, strep test, STI testing, pregnancy tests, those things that we could really transport easily and run without a lot of machinery. And of course, all of our triage equipment. We also pared down the number of people. We really realized that we didn't need as many people as we thought. It's interesting talking about sexual assault nurses, Sarah and I both being sexual assault nurses, examiners, we really felt that that was a priority in the beginning to offer their services. And what we found is not a single patient wanted a sexual assault exam, nor did they feel like they'd been sexually assaulted, which is surprising as healthcare professionals, knowing what all these men and women have been through. And we had to adjust our mind that this was not the priority of care to convince them to get an exam or collect DNA, that our priority was meet their basic needs. We do continue to have a sexual assault nurse at every operation. Usually Sarah, one is there. And what that really allows is if there's a child that's brought in, obviously we would want to do an exam and collect evidence there, and also to offer that services to any adult victims. But it's just kind of interesting how these individuals view themselves, and they don't view themselves as being sexually assaulted for the most part. So we went to this hotel room. We brought the telehealth box and had the telehealth to bring the nurse practitioners and physicians in. We, as I said, minimized the number of people. We realized we didn't need a group of 15. We really needed 2. And what this allowed is shifts as well. The later operations became a 2-day event for 12 hours. So this would allow maybe some nurses to come on day 1 and some to come on day 2. So really not taking up quite as much time out of these busy lives. Let's see if there's anything I'm missing. Oh, we did bring our comfort items, of course. I'm not going anywhere without my pillows and blankets and stuffed animals. I think you can even see the piles of Doritos behind the box there. We had granola bars and peanut butter crackers and chips. And I'm a chocolate lover, so I always have to have chocolate. As any of you guys that are in healthcare knows, some of those meds we give do not taste the best. So for me, having a little Hershey Kiss to chew on after meds is always important. Okay, so here's just an overview of what we kind of have done with our medical responses during these human trafficking operations. You can see a year and a half ago in March, as I mentioned, we started, and you can see the second column is your location and kind of duration of how long it took place. You can see how many patients served. Now, I do want to emphasize patients served is not the total number of patients that were extracted from their trafficker. These are the ones that opted for medical care. Obviously, we're not going to force medical care on anyone, so it's always offered. And if they're not interested, like Jasmine's cousin was not interested in talking to us about any kind of medical care, that's fine. We're going to respect their wishes. Some of the lab tests that were run, just so you have an idea of the kind of things we were doing in each event, and then the treatment provided. It is not all inclusive. There were other things we did at each of these, but just to give you kind of an idea. When you look at the second one that was done in January of 2024 in Fayetteville, you might think, gosh, 0 patients. What did y'all do wrong here? Interestingly enough, we were invited to come to this operation. We get down there, we got our mobile unit set up, and it ended up that there were no individuals that were being trafficked at that operation. So maybe it would be seen as a bust. We called it a great run through. We had not used that mobile unit before, and the mobile unit was there. So it was a great run through and success in its own right, because each time we do this, it's a learning endeavor. But that's why we didn't see any patients there. January, we were invited to go down to Richmond Hill, which is near Savannah. That is an obstacle in itself because all of my team is from the Metro Atlanta area. And as I mentioned, our mobile unit with Bethesda is out of Cherokee County. So that was a lot of clearing schedules and reworking things. We did use the telehealth I mentioned on this operation so that our nurse practitioners and physicians wouldn't have to drive down to the Savannah area. It was 2 days, 12 hours each day, going late into the night on both those nights. We did do full exams, pelvic exams, emergency contraceptive, STI treatment, obviously. Just to share about one patient here, we had a patient who came in and she got on the scale when I was taking care of her, and she had lost 30 pounds, she said, from the last time she'd been weighed. And so I started really kind of investigating why. And she mentioned that her trafficker had put her on cocaine and that she was using multiple times a day, and that was his way of controlling her, not so much in her words, but in mine. But that's what he was doing. And so I have some background and expertise in substance use disorders. So I did SBIRT, which is screening and brief intervention. And then I needed to provide local resources. And this was really a challenge because I'm not from the Savannah area. I'm from Atlanta, and I know all the resources in Atlanta. Well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them for substance use treatment. But I do not know what's in Savannah. So thankfully, our advocate with Homeland Security and CJCC were able to do some research and find us some local treatment facilities that would take her. And the next day she went into treatment and was doing really well in treatment. So she was kind of a nice story to see where she progressed with getting the resources that she need. June of 24, we went up to Cartersville, which was a great location because Bethesda's used to that Cherokee County and North area, so this wasn't as far for them to drive. Again, it was a 2-day. When we got to that location, they had our mobile unit at a fire station a couple miles away, and it was on top of a hill. So if you're from Cartersville, you're going to know exactly where we were. We were on top of a hill where anybody driving by could see our unit. We weren't at the location of the operation, so at least we weren't giving the operation away, but we did feel a bit maybe not the safest place to be up on top of that hill. We were at a fire station, so at least we had the firemen around, I guess. We did not have an indoor area provided, so we had to set up our comfort area outside the mobile truck, the mobile unit, and our nurses and advocates kind of had to hang out outside all day, which in June in Georgia, bless us all, right? But we made it work. We did see quite a few patients, and we did provide kind of the standard care. We did make a lot of referrals. It was great that Bethesda treats and has clinics in that area because we were able to really give them where the mobile units, like a schedule of where that mobile unit was going to be in the upcoming months and talk about continuum of care. We had some pretty significant medical issues there, patients that probably needed more care than we could do there, but not enough that they should go to the emergency room, patients that probably needed ultrasounds or CAT scans and further treatment. And so it was nice that Bethesda had those relationships in the community and offered further clinic dates where they could come and get those labs and those tests that they needed. And then our last one was August in Dunwoody. This one is the one I mentioned in the hotel room. We were there 2 hours for 12-hour shifts. This one was probably the one I've liked the best. If you can have a favorite, that sounds horrible to have a favorite one, but this one's my favorite because we were in the hotel room right down from the takeout room. We're on site. We got to help with some situations that we didn't see at any of the other operations thus far. One of our first patients had said that she had been seen in the ER a few weeks prior and had gotten a blood transfusion for low iron. She also mentioned that she had a urinary tract infection, and she had been given, when she was discharged from the hospital, a prescription for iron supplements and for antibiotics to treat her UTI. Of course, she never went to the pharmacy to pick them up because of her trafficking situation. She was not allowed to do that, and she didn't have money to do it even if she'd wanted to, right? So it was great because she met with our nurse practitioner via telehealth. We were able to get those orders called into a local pharmacy, and one of our nurses ran over and picked her medication up at the pharmacy. So she had on hand her meds under her name at the pharmacy, and then we were able to hand them to her so that she could take them with her. We also had a patient that night who came in pregnant, 8 months pregnant. She had several kids of her own already, and then was 8 months pregnant. I cannot imagine being human trafficked, but I definitely could not imagine doing it at 8 months pregnant. Sarah and I, both being labor and delivery nurses, were excited to provide some prenatal care and education. She had not had any visits this pregnancy to a doctor, so we were able to start her on prenatal vitamins. We were able to listen to heart tones and really talk to her a lot about education and where to go from there. And of course, offer her all the resources to have. There's some great Atlanta resources for pregnant moms. For services afterwards, housing, education, childcare, all those kind of things. Another patient we had came in had obvious strangulation marks on her neck. Sarah and I, of course, have had strangulation specific education, which is really important in this area to really understand the specifics of strangulation and the education that the patient needs. We did a great job giving her really information about how close to death she is. She'd lost consciousness many times. She had lots of memory loss related to those strangulations. So we were really able to provide her great information and give her some resources she needed. And then finally at this operation, we did have a medical emergency happen related to the event. We were called by law enforcement to triage that medical emergency while we waited for EMS to arrive. So once again, something unexpected, but we were able to jump in there and really provide that care for 10 minutes while we waited for EMS to get there. So let's talk more about that multidisciplinary team, because it's so important that it's not just about medical. So looking at all three of these columns, law enforcement, who we've worked with, Homeland Security, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, they come to each of these operations, and it's great because we've been able to build that relationship with those individuals. Local law enforcement help with all the pieces of the puzzle, the locations, and all the logistics. And then we have had the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, attend just to see what Georgia's doing. I'll mention this later, but one of the, if not the only medical team coming to these operations in the country. I know we're the only ones doing it in the state. Sarah likes to say we're the only ones doing it in the country. I don't know what they're doing in every part of the country, but I know we're one of the only ones doing this. So it's great to see the FBI looking at how we're doing things and seeing that multidisciplinary team developed. I've mentioned the medical team and the importances, nurses, especially ones with expertise in mental health, substance use, sexual assault nurse examiners. Almost all of our nurses that we bring are SANEs. And the reason that's important, not so much for the SANE exam, but most of them have had extensive training in trauma-informed language, strangulation, it's a mindset that's different than what you might have had in nursing school. We do have our nurse practitioners and our physicians, as I mentioned, lab technicians, and our community clinic personnel. So that Bethesda bus, somebody's got to drive the bus. We have to have somebody who kind of can do some of the paperwork part. So there are other personnel other than our healthcare professionals that are an important part of that team. Other organizations that have helped, we've had advocates are essential. They speak the language, they know the resources, they are the most important part of this process. We have some survivors that have come and joined us for some of these operations, and let me tell you, they make the patient feel the most at comfort or most comfortable when they come in and they can first see someone who's been through exactly or similar to what they've been to and can talk about the resources they were provided and where they're at now. It gives the patient really a sense of hope and understanding that maybe they don't see with the healthcare professionals. They don't maybe see quite that many. The healthcare professionals they see maybe as intimidating, but the survivors that have lived through it themselves, they really respect. So those are also been a big blessing to us. Our NGOs or non-government organizations, these are where the individuals are placed afterwards. They can go provided housing, resources to further their education, get their GED, child care. They do get medical care. Maybe we link them with substance use treatments, all the different resources, those non-government organizations. And then, of course, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, CJCC, has been instrumental in implementing and really seeing this vision through. So really quick, I want to talk about the lessons learned. First, let's start about the benefits of building this multidisciplinary team, sharing knowledge and expertise. I do not understand all the law enforcement and legal side of everything. They have that expertise, and we're so thankful for that. We have that medical expertise, the comprehensive care, the trauma-informed language, those kind of expertise. So it's great to share that knowledge and expertise. Pooling of resources. It's nice that law enforcement has resources, our NGOs have resources, and our medical has resources, and we can pool them all together to really benefit the patient the best. So that's a really important part of that multidisciplinary team. Building trust and understanding between disciplines. I know as healthcare professionals, it's easy to throw other organizations under the bus and blame and judge. If we work together, we better understand each other. We better work together to really provide the patient what they need. And then number one, we're all there for the same end product, and that is meeting the needs and building trust with these patients. And so I'm just really excited to work with a team that all has the same goal in mind. After every operation, we do a post-operation debriefing. It's really important for us to look and examine and evaluate what went well and what we can do differently. As I've mentioned, you've heard kind of the evolution of how our operations have gone, but it's really important. We don't only poll the medical team, but we talk to law enforcement, we talk to the GBI and say, what could we do better? We talk to our NGOs and our advocates and find out what we can do better to help support them, and thus with us as well. So it's really important that we have a debrief and we evaluate the services we're giving. We've learned that less is more. Like you saw in that first picture, we started out with 15 and now we're down to 2 or 3 nurses on site with the telehealth option there. You don't always need more. It's really finding those nurses that have the expertise, that have that are SANEs, that have mental health expertise, substance use expertise, finding those individuals that really can meet the needs of this population. We've learned that less lab equipment and less meds are needed, really concentrating on HIV testing, STI testing, pregnancy testing. Those are the things they really want to see. We don't have to have the big all the fancy lab equipment that we thought we needed. We have learned that telehealth is a great option. It allows us really to provide full care via telehealth. It's just been a blessing that we have that option. Comfort items and hygiene kits, I'm not going anywhere without them. I really feel like that's one of my top priorities. It really builds trust and comfort. Some of these women have not had any of their own stuff in quite a while, and giving them that. The other lesson we really saw, and we've seen it, I mentioned it with Sarah in that first operation, but in the last operation, we had 2 patients that while working with them, disclosed other criminal activity that we felt was important that law enforcement learned about. They had not disclosed any of that to law enforcement. It was after we had spent several hours with them caring for them and built up that relationship that they disclosed it to the nurses. Obviously, we want to respect that patient's privacy and HIPAA, and we don't want to ruin that trust. So what I learned to do is ask them after they've disclosed this kind of information if I could call law enforcement back down to our room and they would share it with them. And in both situations, they said yes. And they were able to tell law enforcement about some major criminal activity going around our area related to drug use and other trafficking. And hundreds of thousands of dollars of drugs are off the street because these women felt comfortable with the nurses to speak up. And then I asked if they felt comfortable to share that information with law enforcement. So kind of an unseen benefit to this whole thing, which isn't why I do this, but I do love that there's some benefits that we didn't even consider with this multidisciplinary team. Let's see. Next steps. So what is the next steps for our medical response team? We are working, almost finished. Our team is built with Sarah and CJCC, a protocol for medical response teams. That way we can share them across Georgia and even nationally, just with all of the steps that we take to put one together. When we started putting it together, I had nothing to go by. I just went through my expertise and threw something together. And obviously we've learned every operation. So we're hoping to provide other organizations that want to put together a medical response with some valuable information of here's what you need and here's how you do it kind of thing. So that should be coming out, and CJCC will disseminate that when it comes out. We would like to eventually bring nurse practitioner students. I am, a university professor, and education is important to me, especially teaching our nurse practitioners about trauma-informed care. And so we'd like to start bringing some nurse practitioners onto maybe telehealth so they can see how to shadow the language and the care that's provided. It also would increase our personnel, and hopefully after they would get their degrees, they would stick around and continue to provide services for us. So that's on our next steps. And of course, grant funding is always important. Our nurses, as they travel, are kind of paying for everything themselves, gas, hotel, when we've had to stay at hotels. They're taking time off work from their other jobs. So any kind of grant funding to help support equipment and supplies and paying for things we're looking at. So if anybody wants to help in any of that arena, let me know. Developing regional teams. CJCC and our medical team understand that we cannot go everywhere across the state all the time. It makes it really hard to travel. So we also understand what regional teams would be. If we could create regional teams across Georgia, is those teams would be experts in the services in that area. So we want to be able for these regional teams to build their multidisciplinary team in their community. So where is the mobile clinic that's in their area? Where are the NGOs in their area, the advocates in their area, the survivors? Where are the drug treatment facilities? So we really feel like the regional teams will allow us to kind of give them the resources they need to support them, but build those teams. And those regional teams could even move from only a large human trafficking with the GBI to maybe some more local relationships between law enforcement, developing that multidisciplinary team so that law enforcement can maybe call on that medical team when they need other things. Maybe it's not a human trafficking operation. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it is human trafficking, but it's on a much smaller level. It would be great that we could build these multidisciplinary teams regionally so that these relationships of trust and shared resources and knowledge could be in each region of Georgia. I think I am 5 minutes away from my section being done. Questions? Kathy Barnett, I put my contact email down at the bottom. So if anybody wants to reach out, I'll leave that on the screen for a minute while we start questions. So that if anybody needs to reach out to me, feel free to use that email. And I'm sure Alina will send out probably my contact information, other stuff later.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Kathy. I already see a question in the chat. Please, everyone, utilize that chat function as we continue to be on. But the first question is coming from Christella. She's saying, what age range do you typically help? And if you have a large pediatric population, how can those in the child life field help?
Great questions. Great questions. We have been told at every operation they are expecting under 18, teenagers. And when we go in these areas, a lot of times Homeland Security and the GBI know of girls that have been teenagers that have been trafficked, or could be boys that have been trafficked in this area. And unfortunately, we have not had any brought into us yet, which is, we always want to get everyone the resources they need. So we have not had any under the age of 18. But yeah, it's a great question for resources. Obviously, we would follow all the protocols with sexual assault and collecting evidence and advocates that are experts in that child area and getting our local child life advocates involved. And that's an important part because they speak the language that those children, we have not had that come up yet, but I'm guessing at some point we will.
Perfect. Thank you. This is not a question, but Sarah just wanted you to know that you and your whole team are incredible. Thank you for the impactful work. And thank you for sharing some of that info with us. Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions? We have a few more, Kathy, from Kendra Taylor. What differences do you see in healthcare needs of survivors of labor trafficking and sex trafficking? Great question.
Great question. I have not, all of the operations I've been a part of have all been sex trafficking. Sarah did do that labor trafficking, the one I told you about in Waycross in the beginning. And I think those, so I'm speaking from not my personal experience, but just from spending hours and hours and hours with Sarah at these human trafficking events. I think what she's seeing different was a lot more physical ailments with the labor trafficking victims because it was an onion farm. They were out in the heat all day. They did not have clean water. They did not have so we're looking at malnutrition, dehydration, injuries to their fingers, injuries to their backs from being bent over all day, those kind of injuries. Whereas with sex trafficking, a lot of our patients are focused on pregnancy prevention, STI treatments, and testing, and more related to the sex trafficking part of it. They do sometimes have physical injuries. We had one, I mentioned the one with substance use disorders who'd lost a ton of weight. We have some that we had one girl that had constant belly pain, and we really wanted an ultrasound to make sure what was going on with her belly. And so we wanted to make sure we gave her the resources to follow up so she could we did not have an ultrasound machine on the mobile truck, unfortunately. And at 2 a.m, it's hard to find an ultrasound place that you could send them to. So we do take care of other things besides kind of those sex related issues, but really most of our individuals want the care related to what they've been doing with the sex industry. Great question.
Great question. Thank you. Another one from Sharon. Is there a system in place to determine the age of youth?
Yes, law enforcement handles all of that before they get to us. So thankfully, this is one of the other great parts of the multidisciplinary team. They are able to identify them and find all that out before they even come to us. So you're right. When you're talking about Jasmine and her saying she's 24, in y'all's minds, you're probably like, is she really 24, Kathy? Right? And that's okay because police had already identified her and gotten her information so that we do know their ages. And they've done some research to make sure, of course, if any of them are involved in other criminal activity. Of course, we are not criminalizing our human trafficking individuals or individuals who have experienced trafficking, but sometimes they might have a warrant out for their arrest for something else or something related that the police are all handling before they come to us, thankfully. Yeah.
Great question. Any other questions? And while we wait for some people to hop in the chat, some of their additional questions, I just want to say thank you so much, Kathy, for really mentioning that one point about there's a lot of people that have resources and they want to donate those resources. They just don't know where, when, how. And so I think that's really encouraging. I hope it's encouraging for you all to, look out in your communities, right? Maybe you maybe right underneath your noses, some individuals that may have some really great resources to assist what you all are doing, especially if we're talking about trying to regionalize some of these responses. I think that was such a great point that a lot of people don't realize, and just how to mobilize your communities as well to be a part of that MDT response. They're not going to be on site, right, dealing these operations, but very much so a great resource. Other people are just thanking you for all the great work, Kathy, that you've done. Any other questions? All right, perfect.
Feel free, anybody can reach out to me at that email provided. I'm happy to answer questions. If you want to look at how to orchestrate your own multidisciplinary team in your region, Alina and I are happy to help you with that. The state task force that sponsors this event has got great resources in all different areas, not just medical, but legal and law enforcement and all kind of services. So we are happy to be here to help you jumpstart doing something in your area similar to what we're doing here.
Definitely. And I know, Dr. Barnett, you already put your contact information up on the screen and it will be provided later, but if you want to drop it in the chat right now, sure, so individuals feel that they can reach out to you. But once again, thank you so much, Dr. Barnett, for your time, for your expertise, everything that you and your team are doing. It's so incredible, and it's such an honor to be a part of that response statewide. So just once again, thank you so much. And I want to thank all, of course. And I want to thank all of the participants also for coming and attending today. As you can see in the chat, we already dropped the link for the certificate of attendance, right, for attending this presentation, also a survey for this event. So please go on, provide your honest feedback. We really try to enhance these presentations and these series for you all. So please provide that honest feedback. With that being said, we will be sending out a follow-up email in the next few days with both of those links and also an access to the recording of this event. But also resources, right? We've been collecting on the statewide task force multiple different resources statewide, but also very specific to medical for you all. So that's going to be available in that email. And one thing that I want to note, if you were not able to be on our part one, that is on our CJCC YouTube page, the recording of that event, which was very specific to Human Trafficking 101, but within a medical response. If you haven't seen it, please, 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 I recommend going on our YouTube page, looking over it, and also just disseminating this information, right? This is really great information in this part one and part two series for our medical folks. So disseminating that amongst your networks is going to be really, really important because the information is so valuable. So please stay tuned for that email that will be coming up. And I just saw a question. It is our CJCC YouTube page, so the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council YouTube page. I don't know, Carla, if you can drop a link to the first part in the chat, that might be very helpful. And we'll link it in the follow-up email as well. So everyone.
I'm working on that right this minute. So just give me a second.
You're good. You're good. Perfect. And finally, before we close out, I just want to say, please mark your calendars for our part 3, right? This is going to be the final part of this medical series that we've been working on. It's going to be November 19th from 12 to 1:30. It's going to be on Teams. We're going to send out that registration link again with enough time. And we're going to be inviting our speakers from part 1 and part 2, but also other experts, right, in this field to come and lead a panel discussion answering all of the questions that we've been collecting from part 1 and part 2, and then also just answering any live questions when we're talking about that medical response to human trafficking. So please note that on your calendars. November 19th is the final session of this medical series from 12 to 1:30. And of course, if anyone has any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself, to Carla Jacobs. But with that, if no one has any other questions, we are good to adjourn. So I just want to thank everyone once again. Dr. Barnett, thank you so much. And we'll be sending out that follow-up for everyone. So have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.